Mr. Ikedi Isisguzo joins us now. He's the chairman, editorial board of the Vanguard newspapers. Thank you for coming on this morning again.
Thank you very much.
Well, sometimes it's just those who ask themselves repeatedly in terms of the conduct of general elections over time in the country. But lately, in crossover, where you had about 1.2 million people who were registered, elected, I beg your pardon, expected electorates for this election, because these were the amount of people that were registered. And then they also have about 2,823 polling units. But at the end of the day, low turnout. And then complaints come up about the process, and then ultimately the margins and the results, always an issue. All of this keep happening time and again, but in the end, the candidates are sworn in, we go to court and come back, the process goes on. Is that a lot now? Do we have to settle with it? Can we correct some of these things?
Well, elections must be won and lost. And then the option of going to court is one of the windows available to people. But I have some concerns about the numbers. I have a feeling that we are seeing a bit of the issues we raised with registration of voters. I do not believe there are 1.2 million registered voters in Kenya.
Okay.
So when we talk of low turnout, we have to be sure of the number of people, real people, not just that somehow we got figures. Because one of the things politicians do is they try to get all these numbers. See, if you are rigging, there's a whole gap for rigging. I don't believe there are 1.2 million.
What did they get it from INEC?
No, it doesn't matter. These things are raised during registration. That's why this whole process of registration, we have to pay more attention to it. When people talk of apathy from what number? Low turnout.
Do you believe that there are 73 million registered voters in Nigeria?
I do not believe that.
You do not believe?
No, I do not.
You do not
I do not, because even INEC itself has made it impossible for this to be verified.
You do not also believe that there are about 6 million voters in Lagos State?
I do not. I do not believe.
You don't believe any of the figures?
No, I do not. Because if for us to come with these figures concretely, even all this issue of voters cards should be dispensed with. I could walk up to where I registered, put my finger there, and I vote. That's one of the ways to verify this. I should put up my finger there, because you captured all these fingerprints, so you should be able to mark them with real people. It's not when you've done registration, you print number of cards. All this is about the contract mentality. There's a lot of money involved in this. The more people you register, a bigger website or facilities to store data that nobody uses. So if we are saying in Cross River there were 1.2 million people, we need to prove it. I do not believe there were those number of people. So if 400 and something, 500 and something people turn out to vote, then that might actually be closer to the number of people we have. That's one way of looking at it. The other one also is that some people, what they have is not really apathy, maybe disinterest, as it were. Some people stayed home because they think there's no point voting. When the man we voted for wins, nothing changes. The man we have wanted to get in never wins. So they just stay home. Another issue was the court decision. It came so late that some people were not even sure whether the election could hold or not. So all this could have contributed to the low turnout. But principally, we don't have 1.2 million people on the.
It does bother me that you do not believe that figure.
No, I do not.
We already know that INEC is constrained by the law, by the electoral law, that electronic voting cannot take place. People cannot cannot use electronic means to vote as at now, unless of course that law is amended. But the question of verification also came up then. I remember during the April elections when people were also asking, why can't we use the machines to verify? Then, or even do the accreditation, then later on we can vote manually. But I remember that INEC chairman, Professor Tahiru Jega, said something about not wanting to complicate the process, in the sense that a host of people, or some people, can say that even the verification is a part of the voting process.
Electronic voting.
Exactly, go to court saying that they have contravened the law, just to remove that.
No. Nobody was saying. He was just saying what he wanted to say. People were saying, if our thumbs were registered, by these same machines, as process of capturing our details. Why couldn't we have done the verification that same way?
Yeah, but you heard his reply about how some people...
No, it's not a question of some people. If there is a law, the process of implementing that law should be very clear. But what we found out is, with all the money voted, INEC neither had the capacity nor had interest in ensuring that those number of voters, you can verify them and be sure that those voters were the number of voters captured. Because the politicians also played all their own tricks. You know, we had instances where in some constituencies you didn't have enough electoral materials, you know, for registration. You know, that you had, of course, some of these things are manipulated. They're deliberate. In other instances, you'll be told to register in a particular place. On getting there, it's not the place, and all types of manipulation. So eventually, people might have voters' cards that on election day they cannot use. That's another side to it. You know, if in the constituency where that is my stronghold, I'm able to control the registration here, there, you know, get all the cards, get all the people to come in and thumbprint. And my final, depending on the situation, they cannot vote on election day. So INEC must make sure that the voters register is sacrosanct in terms of the fact that every name there stands for a human being who exists.
It is amazing, you know, that I wonder what it would take to convince you.
No, it's not to convince me. You have to do it. All these things
we started off. You do not believe it. I mean, INEC has gone through a very painstaking process. First of all was the process of registration, which they made a lot of noise about. I mean, there was this huge awareness campaign, and hundreds, even thousands, millions of Nigerians came out to register and be counted. And then the April elections came, and then they were able to register. I mean, there are lots of clarification, as it were, in terms of how it was going to take place. Then they introduced the open secret ballot system about how we'll verify in the morning and come and vote in the afternoon, because they do not want people to be able to vote in one place and go to another polling booth and still be able to vote there as well. You know, with all of these checks, as it were, you don't seem to be convinced that INEC is convinced.
Did you register?
I did.
Did you vote?
I couldn't.
Okay. If you registered and you went through the process of voting, you would see the whole thing that you are saying that it's just a huge farce. You know, why do you need to turn up where you registered, you can't find your name? That happened in so many instances. The same place you registered, you can't find your name. Why do you need to go through this elaborate process of is the name on the list or so on? As I'm saying, if these things were captured, you have those machines, the person's thumbprint will throw up the name. Once you come there and put the same thumb on it, will throw up the name. Why wouldn't INEC want to go through processes like that? Because they too know that there are names on those voters registered that can't be verified. And they're not even willing to throw out such names. You know, like as you are saying, even before elections, the process should be, that whole list should be, you know, you revalidate it. Some people have become 18 who we are not. Some people have died. You know, some people have moved out of places where they are. If I was living in a particular quarter in Cross River and I've moved out, you're expecting me to go all the way back to vote in that quarter. Whereas we were expecting, since it was electronic registration, wherever I am. In fact, even if I'm in Lagos and I wanted to vote for in Cross River, I should. You know, so
we're not there yet.
No, we should be there with all the money voted and all the noise about the registration being electronic. We should be there. What does it take? We just get all this data. Nobody does anything about it. So that's why the election is going on and on and on that way. That's one side of it. The other one is that the entire electoral act is so voluminous that I think it's just written for nothing to be done. You know, because all the complaints we are coming about 60 days, 40 days, this. One, nobody is punished for not doing any of those things. Nobody ever. Toggery goes on, talks all over the place. Nobody is arrested, nobody is punished. But the electoral act has terms for imprisonment, you know, fines and so on. So how can we operate a system like that? So between the police and INEC, they've refused to run the election properly. Not just the police, so many security agencies all over the place.
But what can INEC do? Because if INEC apprehends some of these people and hands them over to the police, and then it stops there, haven't they done their part to that extent?
It's not even the role of INEC to apprehend people. When I'm talking of the INEC role, is ensuring that there's equity in terms of what we do with the political parties. We're talking of Cross River. The case might still return to court. This issue of dates. This issue of dates. So we might just leave that one. It might still return to court. INEC must be seen clearly as being, you know, an umpire.
What should they have done to be seen as an umpire in this Cross River case?
What they do to be seen as an umpire, I believe if there are court cases, court rulings, they should be obeyed.
And they've done that. They obeyed this one.
Which of them did they obey?
The one in Bakassi. They didn't conduct elections in Bakassi.
Okay, the one saying no elections.
and they say they didn't get the court order as regards not holding the elections on Saturday.
Okay, but they got the one on Bakassi.
They got it on Friday night.
They got the one on Bakassi.
That's what they...
No, they got the one on Bakassi. They didn't get the one saying do not hold the elections. No, I'm asking.
So they said.
Okay, so they said. You see, some of these things are where people now start having the issue, fears about fairness in the entire process. With Bakassi, you could say, okay, no election in Bakassi. And we are being told the issue is not the number of people in Bakassi. Whether it's 6,000 could affect the results. No. People have a right to that one vote you want to throw in there. You throw it in for whoever you are voting for. Being involved in the process of electing who rules their city. So it's not even the response we got, 6,000 people. So it won't change the results. That's extremely, extremely wrong.
Okay. I know you said you don't believe in the figures that the figures of those registered, those that voted, but
it's not just I don't believe in them; they are not verifiable.
So if you could verify.
No. INEC should verify. You see what we are saying. There was a time we were told if there was double registration, people would be caught.
Yeah.
We had a few names announced, so 5-6 people were arrested here and so on, and that whole process stopped. It shouldn't have been that way. All those the fingerprints are supposed to be cross-linked. You finish the entire process of cross-linking them, so that even if I registered here and I went back to register in somewhere else, because what happens? Many people are told, come home and register. People are going home to register. Yeah, people are going home to register. So we should be able to catch a lot more people who registered in more than one place. So that's what inflated all those figures. If I'm living in Lagos and my people are telling me, come home, the figures we are raising in our village is small, come home. Many people moved that way. Okay. And they registered in the village, they registered in Lagos.
My concern here has to do with the margins in the area of results so far.
Yes.
In the last elections, the 5 elections recently conducted, you notice that the margins are quite wide.
They have to be that way because the opposition parties almost exist by name. They do not have the resources to campaign. And then in the more general election, because everybody is campaigning, somehow the parties try to raise resources and campaign. But all these isolated elections, you find out they hardly campaign. They don't have the money to do other campaign. And so the type of margins you're expecting should be there. That's one aspect. The second aspect is, some studies have shown is party members who vote more during elections than people who have no party affiliations. Because they have a stake. If my party wins, then chances are that some of the things that come from that victory could come to us directly as party members. So in states where certain parties have more people registered as members and those people have cards to vote, then you can see such numbers produced. So what you might see also outside whatever all the irregularities people are looking at is that parties that are very strong in a state and have many people registered as party members could mobilize their members for purposes of the elections. Whereas some other parties, even if they have more media attention and they don't have as many members in that state, chances are that less people will vote for such parties during the election.
But in terms of funding, because I also say it's an undue advantage for the incumbent as opposed to the opposition. What can be done if this is considered an imbalance?
Part of the thing is that party politics here is just not what it should be. People should register as party members and then pay their party dues as a process of raising some funds for the party. I know that the Electoral Act put some restriction on what individuals could give to parties. Again, nobody's monitoring that. Which is why, even if we say somebody is an incumbent, if you are monitoring how money gets in, then he shouldn't spend more than I think there's a ceiling of 100,000 for an individual. And when you see such figures, it just shows you that even from the beginning, the Electoral Act is not going to do anything. There is no election, even for a councillor. Even for a councillor, you're expecting individuals to give a maximum of 100,000. It does not work that way, and we all know this. So the issue of money comes in. Those who are in government have more money. Unfortunately, the Electoral Act, INEC, and all that, they do not have the means to monitor where this money comes in. So the incumbent, with all his friends and people who, it's not just Cross River, that's everywhere, and all the people he has known over the years, they can put the money. Sometimes the money does not come from government sources, the way we look at it, like someone putting hands in the cover and pulling out the money. There might be extreme cases like that, but it comes from just spreading political largesse around, and people know when it's election time, you pull in what had been given out. That's how it works, and it goes that way. So the incumbent definitely has a lot of mileage. Secondly, being in office also ensures that you get a lot of exposure throughout the number of years you are there. So most of the times, the other candidate is barely existent. He doesn't have the resources to be in the media. He doesn't have the resources to campaign. So, but I want to see a situation where party memberships are more enduring, because we see during elections people just cross from one party to the other. So you don't even have a situation where those parties are built up properly.
Shouldn't INEC be concerned about these crossovers, the numerous crossovers?
I think it's more to do with the parties than even with INEC. Because so long as you meet the windows for registering and taking your papers to INEC, you could go and run elections. But with the parties themselves, I think the parties should have some concern for how long you've been a member. You know, that's why the parties, they're just there by name. A party is supposed to have some ideology which you should understand to run under that party and believe in it and be seen as living that way. But what happens is most parties, especially those on the fringes, if they see someone who has some means and they think the person by coming to the party can bring in some resources, they just adopt him. But there have been candidates who found out some weeks to go that they are out. You know, they were an official party candidate and they just find out they are out. You know, so that type of situation also has to do with the parties themselves.
You know, there was a motion in the House, on the floor of the House of Reps recently, you know, saying that the candidates should not be allowed to enter office, or the winner of an election should not be allowed to enter office until issues around the elections are sorted out. Do you think that could help in terms of how elections are conducted?
It could help, but we will have to do a lot about the judiciary. You know, the capacity of the judiciary cannot handle that at the moment.
But is that a wise idea? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it was thrown out on the floor of the House.
Yeah,
it's a wise idea. But again, you see, some of these motions, when they are moved, there are a lot of emotions around them. So you don't even get the depth of that move. What could have just happened is someone felt that way, but almost everybody in the House would also have been affected by that. What we are then saying is, we might have a situation where on the day you should convene the National Assembly, you might not even convene it, because those who won elections in that House, their matters wouldn't have been cleared. You know, you are finishing the elections maybe about a month or so to go, and then the House needs to be convened, and that's barely enough time to finish all those cases. That's why some have made cases for elections being held earlier, which is also a constitutional issue. I think we might need to move the elections and get maybe at least a 3 months gap during which you handle all these cases. That might not even be enough, but it could help that elections are finished about 3 months before the handover date. Then even in case of executive offices, governor, president, the outgoing person and the one coming, they could have enough time for handing over notes to be shared properly. You know, because people just come in and say, oh, we have an empty treasury. That's what we hear. We don't know the details, and in some cases there are no proper handing over notes.
So you should make it mandatory and open to all to see, so that nobody denies tomorrow.
Well,
the handing over process, perhaps.
No, perhaps that should be there, but the foundation should be from the elections holding early enough.
Okay.
So we have enough time to clear all the judicial processes.